This is 22.
Right? Oh, episode
Baby
22, but
dose.
part 3, right?
Yeah, so it's a little
Mhm.
confusing. So this is sex part three, and I'm just gonna dive right in. Okay, so have you
Going right
Zach,
in.
they're the best story.
I'm not crying. I just have something in my eye. I'm like, I'm
Okay,
so
please, you
moved
won't,
by it
you
already.
might be crying with laughter after this one.
Okay.
Okay, have you ever heard of vaginal rejuvenation?
I I mean, I have lots of imagination. I can imagine what it is, but and technically, like as like a
Medically.
it's a medical term. It's not even like a urban term. Okay.
No,
No,
it's not an urban term.
I do not know this.
Fortunately, I'm here
To
to
explain.
explain it to you.
Okay.
Vaginal rejuvenation is a process that a woman can have done
Mm-hmm.
for several reasons.
Okay.
One of the biggest reasons that women have it done
Yeah.
is um
Oh, I haven't. I think I just got it. Okay, this is
stress
already.
incontinence. Okay, stress incontinence from childbirth. So
I'm
like
sorry. I'm changing. Like I
that's
got
okay.
lost in the situation. Go ahead.
Childbirth is extremely
Okay.
traumatic
They're like, oh, I
to
need to get. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to keep going. So, childbirth is extremely traumatic to a woman's body. They actually
Mm-hmm.
equate it to having a gunshot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, pregnancy is traumatic, childbirth is traumatic, and immediately affects a lot of processes in the
Yeah,
body.
which I think is not ever talked about enough. That's
Never talked
yeah,
about, and so it's not. It could be one child, it could be five,
sure.
but like stress incontinence is you know what it's like. Maybe you don't, maybe you don't. I don't know. But a lot of women do, don't cough too hard, don't laugh too hard,
Yeah,
don't sneeze, don't jump up and down.
yeah.
Because it weakens, right?
Yep.
Like, and that's why they call it stress incontinence from the
Mm-hmm.
stress that was done to your body
Mm-hmm.
through childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another reason that women get vaginal rejuvenation is because it tightens up the whole area.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Yeah.
there are men listening right now, they just got hard.
Mm-hmm.
It tightens up the whole area. So there's a couple different reasons to do it. I had it done, and the doctor that I had was an absolute scream. He was a practicing OBGYN
Okay.
for over 30 years.
And
And then
this
he
isn't
just,
the your guy that told you to go and express yourself.
oh,
This
yeah,
is a
no, this
I
isn't
love
my
that you've
regular
had
because
such a wonderful history with these OBGYNs. It's really
I
great.
really have. I
Yeah.
really have. And so the OBGYN that I had who performed the vaginal rejuvenation, he had decided to leave regular obstetric practice and move into sexual health and wellness
Okay.
for people like 40, 50, 60, like because he finds that to be really important. And so
Yes.
he treats men and women.
Okay.
Okay, so I had this vaginal rejuvenation done. Okay, you go once a month for 3 months. It is heat and radio waves
Oh,
that
so
are,
it's outpatient. You're just
yeah, it's out there. Oh, yeah, you can. I went to a bar afterwards. Like internally and externally for a half an hour.
okay.
And the higher the heat you can tolerate, the better the results, right?
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I tolerated the highest heat. Thank you very much. This guy was so fucking funny. Okay, first of all, he blasted rock music while he was doing the procedure. Like classic rock. He was probably in like his like late 50s, early 60s. He was from downstate originally, still had this accent. He was there for the heyday of Studio 54.
Oh boy.
He told me some stories. I was like, wow, guy didn't hold back. He was awesome. Like he was absolutely
And
awesome.
so let's just say, not only was he part of the heyday, he actually got in on a regular basis. So that says a lot.
He was in.
Yeah.
And so the funniest thing, well, two funny things. Like he said to me, like during my last little treatment, is like the next guy that you have sex with is going to send me a bottle of scotch. I guarantee. I was like, I'll let him know your address.
It's,
Um,
I'll
but
leave it on the side table.
but he told me about he has this patient, this woman. So you can have this done and you can go back every year if you feel like you need to for
Okay.
like a re-up, shall we say.
Okay. Okay.
But he has a patient, she's in her 70s,
Okay.
and she has been coming to him for vaginal rejuvenation. She's in her 70s. She is in a senior swingers group. I'm not shitting you. She's in a seniors swingers group. He was telling me all about her. He's like, and she came to him one time. I mean, real life, like walk in the door, throw your keys in the basket. Like
Yeah.
we're talking like for seniors,
Yeah, yeah.
all seniors. They
Okay.
don't allow any young people in.
All right.
And she came to him one time and said, I'd really like for you to come to my group and be a guest speaker about how they can maximize their sexual experience at their age.
Actually, it sounds like a perfect thing for him to do. Yeah.
Oh, he went.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he loves to talk. So he went and he explained to like the women and he explained to the men, you know, if you're dealing with this, or if you're dealing with this, or if you'd like to, if you need help with this. It was great for his practice,
Yeah,
number
I bet.
one.
Yeah.
But like I thought it was interesting that, it ain't over till it's over, folks. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like,
Yep. 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 Yep.
so this I thought was a good segue because not that a senior swingers group is taboo, but I think a lot of people would be like, what? Like these people are
Yeah. I mean, that could
grandparents,
be a
right?
whole nother
Like
conversation, is the misconceptions of sex and age. I mean,
age. Mhm.
it's just it's so, because when you're 30 and you think, oh my God, by the time I'm 50, like you also think, I'm not gonna care what I look like and things like that, which is just, it's none of that's true.
None of
Um,
that's true.
yeah. And again, you and I have made mention that healthy sex lives are such a part of, the mind, body, spirit part.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
And like we said last week, like sex is important. Okay.
Mhm.
It's important on a number of levels. It's important for connection.
Mhm.
It's important for intimacy.
Mhm.
It's important mental health wise.
Mhm.
It's important physical health
It
wise.
is. Yeah.
But it doesn't just serve as, you know,
An
I don't know
instant moment of
how to say it.
gratification. It's
Right.
not, it's got long-term.
It's
And if
not
you look outside our culture and you look into other cultures, that's much more talked about. And it's just, it just is. Again,
this is.
we're pretty backwards still in a pretty young country. So.
I think so. And so, but I briefly, and I'm not even going to really talk about this, but I saw an article, it was just yesterday in CNN, and it was how to reestablish the erotic thread in your relationship with your partner if it has become sexless.
Mhm.
And it's not about sex. It's about, like, they call it the erotic thread, meaning like throughout the day, little things, like it
Absolutely.
said,
That's what, yeah, it's so important. And that's a
with each
lot of
other.
what I start with
Send a
couples.
spicy photo.
Yeah.
Or in the morning when you leave, when you kiss goodbye, like they call it simmering, right? They call it
Yes.
simmering. So
Yes.
that like have a
You want
really
to have a low grade sexual energy,
there.
not something that's
Yes.
intolerable, but you want it there on a consistent basis, because especially as you get older, to rev all that back up, especially if you got kids and it's like, okay, now we got to do it now. But if you can keep that low grade energy there, it's a lot easier to tap into. Yeah.
I also think too, and you tell me if this is, and then we'll get into taboo subjects.
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there, I believe, that
Mm-hmm.
like, they've got kids and they're like, oh, we've got these kids, we're so tired, blah, blah, blah. We'll get it back. We'll get it back, right? We'll get it back when the kids are older, when the kids are older. I do sometimes think there's a point of no return with some of that. I mean, like, and in this article, this erotic thread article, it was saying like, you don't let it go too long.
Mm-hmm.
Really, don't let it go too long. Because what starts to happen? Resentment,
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
resentment,
Yeah.
or just not so much falling out of love, but like it's not a romantic love anymore. It's a
No.
more of a platonic love,
Yeah.
loss of attraction.
Yep.
Like when people are like, well, they're married, they love each other, so of course, no, man, I know people who've been married for 20 years, 25, 30, sex is off the table.
Yeah. You
I
have to
mean,
make it a priority. It has to be. It's just because it's something that might have come easy in the beginning, don't just expect that to always be the case.
Yes.
Especially in lesbian relationships with women,
Okay.
like we were talking about, there's this, I don't know if you've ever heard the word so lesbian bed death is what they call it. Because, in the beginning, that's what they call it. You get the
Sounds
U-Haul and then all
horrible.
bets are off. But part of that is because once women find a partner, we're
Mhm.
wired to calm all that down.
Not me, baby.
Yeah, but not if you engage with, but then when you have two women together and if the focus becomes nesting and all of that, but it's just this little, what women have a tendency in their relationships to, like you were talking about, if you let it go too long, right? It's actually just a hiccup in the relationship. If you can move past that, you can find that other part of one another again. But a lot of them just kind of settle into that. And then all of a sudden, yes, resentment, things of that nature. Yeah.
Well, okay, and I'm gonna say this too. Um, if that's what people choose their relationship to be for the rest of their time together, fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, but there is normally in these situations, there is a partner who's like, wish we were having sex a little bit more
Yeah.
or at all,
Yeah.
So this erotic thread article was really interesting. And it says, like you said, in the beginning of a relationship, it does come very easy and it's all the time and it's wild and you're trying stuff and whatever. And it says in there, because in the beginning, just like you said, not all the elements are involved, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
it's not like we haven't gotten to the point where like, I think I want to marry you or I'm like in love with you and then you start with like, I hope I'm good enough. Oh gosh, what if they found out this about me? So then it does start, right? Like in the beginning, it's just like
No, you're much more
ooh,
uninhibited because you don't have all those fears attached to it. Yeah.
fears of losing the person, fears of so I just thought that was I found that article to be interesting. I didn't read the whole thing. I kind of skimmed it. I actually sent it to a friend of mine. I don't know how that person took that, but I know that their personal situation is lacking.
They didn't
is
respond.
is lacking. Oh no. Well, listen, here's my thing, and I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
I have friends who are struggling with all different types of things.
Yeah.
And by no means am I a professional in any of these types of things.
Mhm.
But what the reason I say things and the reason I make suggestions and the reason I send things like that is very simple because I care.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, friends of mine who've gone through divorces, friends who are in abusive situations, friends who are in, maybe relationships that they're not 100% happy in.
Yeah.
Um, it's because I care.
Yep.
That's why I say things.
Yes.
And maybe I don't put them the best way all the time, or maybe I come across a little, I feel strongly, Katie. Okay. I feel strongly.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
And when I feel strongly, sometimes I convey something
Yeah.
strongly. Now, I don't yell at anybody or tell them what they're supposed to do, but sometimes I am like, you need to take a look at this.
Mhm.
Okay. You need to
Yeah.
take a look at this.
Yes.
And so I did send that article to somebody and I did say, I thought of you when I read this.
Mhm.
This is something you should think about. This is something you should try. You know, you fix it or you don't. Like, we're not here forever.
And it's
You
okay
fix
if you don't, but if you're voicing that you need it fixed, then yeah. Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
So y'all, if you're listening and you're ever like, Ellen is like beating my door down and to do with my life, it's because I care. And
Yeah.
you
And
know what? If someone did that to me, if someone said, when I was going, I actually know when I was going through my separation and my divorce, people were like, actually, no, because dude, I was on fire. I was on top of that. Like, the second I made my decision, I was like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but if someone came to me and said, if I was in a situation with someone or I was in a relationship with someone and it didn't look great or it didn't, I would hope someone would come to me as a
Yes, that's what
friend,
I was gonna say. Everybody
as a
needs
loved
friends
one.
that come forward and say, hey, you know what? This just looks a little off to me.
Doesn't look good, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't look good.
That's another,
And
we should actually have partial episode about how to approach people, because talk about gun
mhm.
shy, how do you approach someone you care about who's in a dysfunctional relationship without pushing them away? In fact, I just had to do that. recently.
Hard.
But,
Well, because okay, we'll get into that. Well, because
yeah. But
we'll
let's
get into
stay, let's stay, because that's a whole
let's stay
nother.
where we're at.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we wanted to talk today. Oh my God, I have 37 text messages. Um, hopefully not from people. Oh, wait, this isn't out yet. They can't see it. Okay,
No.
so I looked up, okay, the taboo definition. Okay, just the
Okay.
definition is, hold on, you got me up so early. My eyes are still blurry. Oh, I can't do that either. A social or religious custom prohibiting or forbidding discussion of particular practice or forbidding association with a particular person, place, or thing. A social practice that is prohibited, restricted, speaking, their example, speaking about sex is taboo in his country. Okay.
Yeah, I
Now,
think first of all, we should acknowledge the words cultural and societal. So that means that it's really limited to wherever little pocket you're in. Yeah.
so when I looked up taboo sexual practices, because that's basically what we are kind of talking about.
I'd love to see your search history.
Won't show it to you. So okay, so one that is considered, and this just came up that
Yeah,
right
sure.
when I said the number one sexual taboo
Mm-hmm.
is incest.
Mm-hmm.
For obvious reasons. Incest between parents and children, incest between siblings.
Mm-hmm.
That is considered the number one taboo. Now, I think it should be talked about because it happens.
Oh, it happens a lot. Yeah.
Um, but it's funny because when you put in sexual taboos, like there's the biggies, right? Like there's incest, sex with animals.
Yeah.
These are set. But then depending on publication,
Right.
right? Or depending on, there are people that consider oral and anal sex to be sexual taboos.
Well, I mean, it's all across the board.
It's
So
all
let's
across the
talk,
board.
let's talk about, so I think let's talk about the big ones first. So if you go back in history, obviously siblings, we had, I mean, go back to the big wig, what, I don't even know, Renaissance times, what was it? When the,
We should
the,
probably do our research.
I know, I want to say it's not Victorian times, it was before that.
Are you talking about like, are we going, I mean, speaking of the Greeks and the Romans,
Oh, we're
there
going
was
back even
incest.
further. Well, the point being, so remember, so again, you and I were talking about marriage and contracts and all of that. And a lot of the incest and stuff was keeping the bloodline in the family, right? Now, obviously we know that will create a lot of birth defects, a lot of issues like that, inbreeding, it even
Right.
happens when we do it with dogs. So I'm going to
Not
talk
when
about
we do it with dogs.
well, no,
When we
when
breed.
we read, that's the
Jesus
second taboo.
Christ.
No. So let's talk about that, right? So
Just wanted to clarify.
let's talk about the natural. I firmly believe that the universe will show you when something's wrong. Okay. Now I got two components of this. So if you are too close in relation and you make children, they will not be healthy. Okay. Number one.
Number one.
And so that's not good. So even if you're looking at sustainability, not good. Okay. Now, let's take the concept of consent.
Okay.
Children and animals cannot consent.
That's correct.
Okay. Now I'm breaking this down to I've done trauma therapy and sexual abuse therapy and incestual sexual abuse and covert narcissism, that's about emotional incest and lack of boundaries and stuff. There's nothing about that can, from seeing it and also the natural world of things, there's nothing about that there's nothing positive that comes of that. Okay, I have not seen, and I have worked with people who have engaged with sexual relations with animals, and I had to have conversations with them, very mentally ill people who thought, one in particular, who thought that was their, and I did report it, by the way, I had to.
Who do you report it to?
I reported it to I'm not gonna get into it, but
Okay, all right.
I
I was
did,
just
yeah.
wondering
But
like who
I
you would
did
refer.
put it out there, to
Okay.
make sure that no animals would be harmed, and so I did. And unfortunately, I did have to have that animal removed from that house. But nothing good came of that, right?
Mm.
Okay, there was nothing
No.
good, there was nothing healthy about that, there was nothing reciprocal, and the individual was very ill. So their judgment of what they thought was happening was not true. And the repercussions of incest with children, not good. So just generalizing, okay, when bad things occur from something you're doing, sexual or not, no.
That makes it okay. That's why I think some of these, what I guess you could call like, non-negotiable taboos happen, right? I mean, like, or why they're considered the high on the list, incest,
Yep.
sex with animals,
Yep.
um,
Because they do damage.
right, emotional, mental,
They do
physical,
damage.
like, yeah, it's a damaging, not productive, healthy, leads to no good, right? Like for
Yep.
for anybody
Yep.
involved or anything involved.
Now, I've got different thoughts about second cousins and things like that. I mean, um, and we can get into that. And I've seen situations like that. And I have very different opinions clinically and personally about that than I do when it has to do with children or things of that nature. I've seen, I mean, super close relations, no, because let's just think, if you're gonna have a children, that's not gonna, I have seen, second cousins, or I don't even know what the relation, very distant cousins,
Okay.
marry and have children and all was well. So,
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, like we were saying, in Edwardian times,
thank you. Did you look it up?
I didn't.
You
I
just
didn't.
knew?
No,
Very
because I
nice.
was thinking in my head about what kings and what queens have been married off to a cousin.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that happened a lot of times because it's like King of England marries the princess from Portugal who's his second cousin, but like, and
Yeah.
it kept them rolling. Or Catherine of
Mm-hmm.
Aragon, weren't they related? I mean, like, I think they were.
Yeah.
um I think they were.
I think they figured out how to have babies that were healthy. They just kept removing how close they were. They could still keep the family connected and keep the line. But I think they figured out through trial and error that if you keep distancing, the relation, then your children and your heirs are more likely to survive and be healthy.
Right. So amazing that they figured that out back then, but they were not doing that, like you said in the beginning. They were not this to them, it was not taboo, it was not incest. To them, it was like, we want to keep our family line strong.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to keep a royal family line strong? Marry another royal. Oh, even better, marry one that's related to you, right? Like, that was their
That was the
thinking.
logic. Yeah.
That was their thinking.
Yeah.
And this was, and I think about it, there were, little girls who were promised to someone when they were 5. Okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they were married by they were 12, when they were 12,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's only later in time that these things were like, you're marrying a 12-year-old to a 42-year-old, like,
Yeah,
what's,
that
like,
all came later. Yeah.
that all came later. And so, hi, my dog, hi, Lulu. We spend our mornings together, so she's going to be walking around me this whole time. Um, so then, okay, so other examples, of course, and these have, I think, this is interesting because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
a lot of this has changed it. A lot of this has changed. Homosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
It says it's still shunned in
Mm-hmm.
some Middle East, being notably.
Yep.
Um,
So, and let's just, as we're going through this list, I'll ask you the question. Does it cause harm? Okay, moving on. There you go.
and they say, in some cultures you can be put to death for being homosexual.
Still, yeah.
Okay. Cross-dressing
Does it do harm?
does not.
There you go.
It does not. But there's a lot of countries that consider it sinful. And, they say like, Lebanon, Kuwait, South Sudan, Tonga. I mean,
Yep.
okay. Oral sex and anal sex.
Consensually, does it do harm?
Want a fun fact?
Yeah.
I'm full of useless information, just so you know. But the reason, if done well, anal sex is so enjoyable is because there are more nerve endings closer to the surface. So you feel more, right?
Yep.
Like that's,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, and I was reading, this was actually a science, like a medical science article. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so enjoyable, because the nerve endings are right there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch,
Concentrated. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
bunch. Whereas if the same amount of nerve endings and closeness to the surface was in the vagina, birth would
Oh.
be like, well, it's already excruciating. Well, yes, it is. It wouldn't
No,
happen.
it wouldn't
It'd be
happen.
absolutely unbearable.
No.
So like when people talk about anal sex and, like, I'll never forget that line from Sex in the City, like Samantha, who's the one who's done everything. And Charlotte was thinking about having anal sex because her boyfriend wanted to.
Uh-huh.
And Samantha's like, oh my God, it's fantastic. She's like, what? And she wanted to.
What?
And
Get on
Charlotte's
that.
just like, because everybody has a different view of that, right? Like some people are like, absolutely not,
Right.
never, no way, not going to happen.
Yeah.
Other people are like, I'll give it a whirl. And other people are like, it's fabulous. There are articles I've read where women say I prefer anal sex to
To
vaginal
vaginal
sex.
sex. And it's
Mhm.
funny because in working with couples, and there's still so much shame. I work with couples
Mhm.
for men to have to, to want, I give them so much credit because there's so much, because it's linked to homosexuality. And my God, what if you're a guy and you like anal sex, then, as the receiver, if you're the giver, then you're just a bro, but if you like it and
You're the
you're,
pitcher, not the catcher.
yeah, right. And oh my goodness, I normalize it a lot. For men, not only is their nerve endings, their prostate gland is there. There's all kinds of things.
You're a
And
P spot.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, and there's just so much shame around it. And even with their partners and their wives, and when they can move past that, there's a whole lot of fun they have together. But it takes a lot, and I've had wives catching their husbands, engaging in it on their own and that kind of thing. And it becomes this big thing. And yeah. But
Which
again,
doesn't need to happen because the couple can, like I've talked about before, love honey. They're, like I said, very sex positive.
yep,
They talk about everything. They have everything you could ever think of. And if a male in a heterosexual relationship with a girlfriend or a wife wants to try pegging, or
yep.
there you have
Yeah.
everything you need
And
for
it's
that.
just, yeah, it's one of those things where absolutely take your time. And a lot of time, it's just, my heart just, it's very sweet. And to watch them walk through this process. And I actually recommended honey to a couple not that long ago after you told me about it, because I had heard about it, but I hadn't gotten into it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a great resource.
Well, because it's not just, and I'm not gonna, but hi, free advertising, love honey.
Right.
It's not just products, right? They have articles.
Yeah.
They have a staff. There are people on their
Yep.
staff who are trained in sexual therapy.
Yep.
Like
And if you want to
I,
try something new and you aren't sure how to do it safely and stuff, there's a lot of resource there. Yeah. Yeah.
you could actually. So okay, so now oral sex,
Because
which
there is just, in the work that I do, just to
go
clarify,
ahead.
so
Yeah,
that, I talk about the emotional process, not, a sex therapist would sit with you and walk you through the steps of how to make that happen. It's just to differentiate with the different kinds of therapy. I do relationship therapy, which obviously involves their sexual relationship with one another and what that looks like. But if you're looking for someone to actually coach you in how to get to those places, then you'd go and go to Love Honey or find a sex therapist. Yeah.
and so okay, so that's anal sex, which I think there are people out there who can't even say anal sex, right? Like I mean, who are just like,
Yeah,
what?
I'm sure.
Um, Oral sex. It's funny that there are still laws in some states in the US that criminalize sodomy,
Yep.
oral sex,
Mhm.
that criminalize it.
Yep.
And you know why
They do.
that is? It's because, and this is going back to like the olden days,
Oh, yeah. I know what you're
because
gonna
oral
say.
and anal sex aren't for the purpose of procreation.
No, it's pleasure only. So anything that's why masturbation, all of that stuff is on the big no-no list. Because
Mhm.
if you weren't working towards the cause of creating children, then everything you're doing was pleasure-based, and then that's a sin. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we create these children, and they're a pain in our ass for the next 20 years. Kidding. Love you guys. Two of my boys are home right now, so this should be interesting. But I've always been open, actually. Like I I'm sex positive,
Mhm.
right? Like I've told my kids, if you are going to be sexually active,
Oh, yeah.
that's not something you hide from your parents, because
No.
who better to come to say, like, is this like, should I do this? Like, who better to keep you safe than your parent? Who better?
Yep. Yep.
And that's just how I feel about it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, but
Agreed.
that's just me. So
Agreed. Yeah.
if they can hear me right now, they're not surprised by anything coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. So then another one that's considered a biggie,
Mhm.
extramarital sex, which I don't even think that belongs on this list anymore. But
I
like,
don't think so either. Yeah.
they're talking about it, in some countries where it's considered taboo, like the Philippines, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Brunei, right?
Okay, well, let me ask you
Um,
this, Ellen, your
sure.
interpretation
Go
of,
ahead.
again, my go-to, does it cause harm? So,
Well,
right, so
that's a tricky
where
one.
is the gray here? Tell me how it causes harm, how it could not cause harm. What do you think? Where does where does this line?
This one's difficult
Mhm.
because this is not just about sex. This can be about emotion. So when you say cause harm, it could cause harm to, if it's a spouse,
Mhm.
the spouse. It could also cause harm, and I don't think this is looked at enough because, again, we have our notions that we have. Could also cause harm to what's called the other party, right? The third,
The
um,
collateral damage, yeah.
because that's a person also.
Mhm.
Let's not forget that's a person also. So when you hear about, and this is classic, this is how it goes, right? So, well, let's go with the classic example. Husband cheats on his wife,
Mhm.
right? People find out.
Mhm.
Whose fault it is it? The other woman.
Mhm.
That's what you hear every time.
All the
It's
time.
the other woman. She's a home wrecker. She's a
Yep.
this, she's a that. And you know what? I'll tell you this. A lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times this woman has been pursued.
Yep.
A lot of times there's emotion involved.
Mhm. A lot of times they don't even know the other individual's married.
A lot of times they don't know the person's married.
Yeah.
A lot of times the spouse is actually the what do you want to call it? The active spouse who's actively, committing adultery, infidelity, might have genuine feelings for this other person. Nobody actually wants to believe that for some reason. Everyone always says,
Well, that's
oh,
because
it's
the human condition,
fantasy
everybody,
land.
they want it black and
Yeah.
white, and they want to be able to blame very easily, and they don't want a gray area because then it's too hard to work out in your brain. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be pretty honest. I've experienced with this. Okay.
Mhm.
And how quickly as a person you can be vilified. And when people say, you should have known better, you should have known better. You know what? How come nobody ever points to the guy and says the guy should have known better?
Mhm.
Hi, the one who's married and has children and, is a pillar in his community. And, everybody loves him. He's such a great guy. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, no, he had an affair. Oh, my God, she must have lured him with her feminine wiles, into her nest of, nefarious purpose. It is such an old, tired story.
It is.
And
Yeah.
like I said last time, people cheat
Mhm. Mhm.
because they want to. So when you say, okay, harm, right? there are spouses out there, female, male, doesn't, whatever type of relationship dynamic we're talking about, who might find out that their significant other cheated when outside the relationship. They may not give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens too.
Yeah.
Where they're like,
It
you know
might
what,
be, I've had
just
people
don't make a fool out of
that
me.
are
Just don't make
relieved.
a fool.
Yeah, they're
Well,
just like, you just seem
sometimes.
happier. Yeah, they're like, you just seem happier. But then so the
there's
key,
so much to that.
yeah. So the
There's so
key
much.
element when it causes harm is when there's betrayal, right?
Yes.
Betrayal is a son of a gun. So
That's what it is.
yeah. So there's always needs to be communication. It needs to be agreed upon jointly. It needs to be constantly reviewed, what's going to be our parameters? What are we going to do here? I
Revisit
think,
it.
yeah. And I think where we run into problems is when there's a wall, is when you have, and not even married folks, but folks in long-term committed
Sure.
relationships, is when the person says, I'm not getting my sexual needs met, and I think I would like to go outside the relationship to make that happen, but I'm still coming home to you. And then the other partner says, no, I can't do that. So then that's when we start really running. So you rock or the hard place. I mean, you can't say, hi, I'm not going to participate in the things you want to do. And at the same time, hi, you can't go and find that elsewhere. So if we take the concept of monogamy out of it, let's just change it.
Okay.
And I were to say, the person would say, I really love pottery so much. Oh no, let's say I love traveling. I love traveling so much. And my partner says, I hate traveling. I'm like, oh, okay, then I need to travel with my friends or other people. No,
No, you can't do that.
you can't do that. So
I'm
it's
not gonna go with you. You can't go.
so that's not fair, right? So there needs to be some sort of, that's when you hit a wall, and that's when we start looking at, is this relationship going to work for you, kind of thing. Because yes, you start,
so interesting.
yeah, if you start squashing your desire to travel or your need for more sexual attention that's not happening in your, it never goes well. That's if you're not, it just creates resentment, like you were saying. It just creates resentment.
Because it's part of you,
Mhm.
right? Like it's part of you.
Mhm.
It is like and we'll go with just strictly marriages, right?
Mhm.
Like it's your connection. It's your, like, I mean, like in that article I was talking about, that erotic thread. And these are sex therapists and PhDs who are talking about this. They're like, think about it. Think about the day after like the morning after you've sex with your partner. You're both in a great mood. Everything seems easier. Your communication with each other, how
Which
you
is
handle
another, side
problems.
note, that's exactly part of the narcissistic stuff too. That's why you get really honed into it, because that's the one time where there is that, and then the rest of it falls apart.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm talking about a healthy,
Yeah, but I'm
right? A
saying even
healthy
in an
relationship.
unhealthy relationship.
True. Right.
Yeah.
So like, okay, so like you said, you cannot tamp down who you are or what your desires are.
Yeah.
And now when we talk about taboo type stuff, like, okay, then like we were talking about the sex languages and we talked about kink. Okay.
Right.
And man, I have had the most interesting life. Sometimes I back at it. Like, okay, so
You're like, wait a second, I did what?
I did book. No, so I very briefly for a hot minute dated this guy who was into BDSM. Okay. And he wanted to be submissive.
Okay.
That is his thing. And he wanted to call me mistress.
Okay. Pretty standard with the mistress was the thing. Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't need another area of my life where I'm in charge of everything. Like, so this is not my gig.
Yeah.
And I was like, whatever, dude, that is you, right? And he even said, and this was a really interesting comment, he said, it took me 20 years to be who I am. It took me 20 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is what I like. It ended his marriage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It ended his marriage. He's like, but I finally feel like myself. And I said, that's wonderful, but it's not for me. Okay, it's not for me. Um, I don't want to whip anybody with a, like he liked,
Uh-huh.
to be like,
And it's mostly that whole scene is more about the degradation and, not necessarily the pain.
that's
Um,
another thing that I was like, who, like submissive and call me mistress, but then you also want to be, what is the word I'm looking for? It's like the
Humiliated,
multi-stripped leather thing. Flogged.
flogged.
Okay, flogged. That, and I was like, see, if I was to participate in that, which I did not,
Mhm.
me being the overthinker I am, I would have
Right.
been like, why does he want me to do this? What happened to him? Where in his childhood? Like, I mean,
Mm.
that's what I would start thinking.
Well, let me
And
clear
now,
something up for you.
please, because
It's
I'm
not always,
probably wrong.
so you could actually look at any concept, any sexual desire, and wow, this is a,
This is
hmm.
a tough one.
No, it's not. It's just long. So I'm trying to,
Summarize.
yeah.
Summarize kink.
Well, just so you know, so it doesn't necessarily come from abuse.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
it doesn't. We some do, some stuff does, and it's replaying it because your first experience with sexual arousal, a lot of times will resurface.
Right.
And especially high levels of arousal, um, even if it's thoughts that you try to keep will resurface. Got plenty of folks who, oh my gosh, they'll be like, why is it when I'm super turned on, I have this vision of the person who abused me when I was a child? I'm like, because that's your first intrinsic body memory of sexual arousal. So for some folks, there's abuse attached to that stuff. And that's a whole side note. And just because those things resurface in your brain doesn't mean you're a bad person either. But some people, because they are constantly feeling like they are unbalanced, right, in their role of
Mhm.
power or their need to control, sometimes they need the pendulum all the way to the other end so they can feel balanced. Now, I have thoughts on balance in general. I feel that if you balance out your life in other aspects, and I have seen this happen, some folks are less inclined to be submissive or to play those roles because they're just lacking balance. But that's just something I witnessed, but not
But I
necessarily
was
from
just,
abuse.
yeah,
Not
I was just,
necessarily.
it wasn't for me. And I basically was like, you do you, guy,
Mhm.
find your people.
Yeah.
But and they've always referred BDSM is referred to as a subculture. Okay.
Mhm.
I don't think it's necessarily a subculture anymore
Well, I
because
don't think so at all. I mean, it used to
sexual
be,
freedom is
yeah.
has grown. And I think that there are people, well, that stupid 50 Shades of Grey. I never read it.
Yeah.
Never read that shit. But when that came out, everyone was like, oh, like, oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. It's like, come on, people have been doing this, been blindfolding and everything for
Yeah,
years.
but that's
Like,
the thing. So remember that there was just in the heat of the moment, you slap someone on the ass that used to be considered BDSM. You tie someone up with a scarf, one hand to the post of your bed that used to be considered BDSM. Those are much more standard practices,
much
blindfolds,
more
things like
normalized.
that.
Yeah,
But isn't that kind of how things go, right? Those things aren't causing harm or really making anyone uncomfortable, but it's all that concept of where are you at as a partnership in regard to your sexuality. But those things for a long time, that was just as bad as flogging.
right. And if it's consensual,
Mhm.
then if it's consensual, where's the harm? Right?
Really
If it's
high-end
consensual,
BDSM clubs, I mean, they are so well regulated.
yes.
I mean, whenever I have run into people that becomes one of their interests, I recommend they go do that as opposed to just finding someone online because that's dangerous. Yeah.
Don't go
You
online.
don't know. You don't know what their motivations are, what their own abuse patterns are. You don't know. But these
Don't
clubs are there's some in New York City. There's in the bigger cities, there's a lot of them. There's probably one here. I don't even know, but I don't know if I'd go to a small town BDSM club. But um
Hey, I
But
remember you in high school.
also, this
Family.
is what you do now. Bye-bye. I was the auditor. I was just checking the flogs. Make sure they're all, they're getting good, no broken pieces. Bye-bye.
I'm from OSHA.
Just gonna put your certificate here and I'm out. Um, anyway, I do recommend if you're gonna engage in that and you're a new person and you don't know the community, they are a good community and they are very close knit. Because they have to be. It's something that has the potential. There's another thing. If you are part of a community that has the potential sexually to cause harm,
Right.
that is a close boy. They take care of each other because
I was just gonna say they protect each other, right? Because
absolutely,
they protect each other from, from the people out there that
yeah.
want to shut it down or want to shame them or
Or
the
want to
shame
take or want
again.
to use it as
Shame,
a
shame.
venue to do harm,
Right.
which is unfortunately out there as well. There are
Of course it
opportunists
is.
in the worst kind. But if that's something you're interested in, find a community and they will take care of you, especially if you are a new person into it. They'll make sure that, unless you're just trying fun stuff at home. I'm just saying, just don't go find a stranger and say, let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, so, and this is where it all comes back, right? If you have a kink, if you want to get involved in that, but your partner doesn't,
Yep.
then you have the discussion of, okay, if that's important to you, um, you know, go join like a club but will we still have our, you
Yeah.
know,
You know what? It is
connection with
so,
each other that's
yeah.
not involving that?
And I think that's
Um,
what's so important. You're talking about connection and I'm talking about sex. So,
mhm,
um,
mhm.
and you talk about,
I'm just talking
you,
about the harm part, but
yeah. So
right.
when we talk about the harm part, what you had said, I was trying to remember, uh, shoot, when you were saying something about connection and that, well, that's where the threat comes in. When all of
Right.
a sudden there's that emotional um bonding. But before I even say that, when going back to, when the partner says, no, I can't, and you're like, but I love to travel, that kind of thing.
Right, right,
There
right.
are, I can't even, I think one of the things that we have a very limited, especially when you're talking about things that are so vulnerable and scary with someone that you love, and they're talking about venturing out, um, you can connect very intimately with people emotionally, spiritually, and physically, right? All of which
Sure.
can be kind of scary if you're not the one that they're doing it with. So, but there are tons of ways to explore different ways that your partner is into something without participating, especially now that we have the internet. I've had people, I've had like the partner go, I can't do that, and I'm not comfortable with you going outside the marriage. However, I will watch you watch it. I will go with you and we will watch live shows and then go home, but I can't, as long as there's some movement, it's only as limited as your creativity. You're like, so you start with, what won't you do? Well, I'm not gonna hit him and he's not gonna hit me. Okay. Would you do a blindfold? Okay. Okay. So you gotta really, if the person's willing to explore, great. If they're absolutely not, then you got a problem. But there's so many ways. And that's the fun sex part. That doesn't mean that, and there isn't that's very different than finding that connection and the intimacy and all of that. I've got people,
Yes.
I got hope people who
Yes.
can't, for one reason or another can't have sex. And so that is met outside, the physical part is met, but the emotional and the intimacy and everything is at home. Yeah.
And see that when we talk, so this is why it's taboo, right? Because people don't want to think about that. People don't like, like when I talked about how when we talk about extramarital affairs or extramarital activity to begin with,
Right.
and like my standard example of a man cheating on his wife and it being the other woman's fault.
Right.
And you know what? Because people, when they hear that, when they hear like, oh my gosh, he cheated on her, they have such a great relationship. It's because they're terrified it's going to happen to them. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
where the hurt part comes in. Now, are they terrified because it would break their heart? Are they terrified because they're going to lose their lifestyle. Like, you don't know what the fear is. You know, a lot of people assume, oh, it's because her heart would be broken and or his heart would be broken. Sometimes it's like, no, I don't want you to fuck up my life. I like that. I like it the way it is, you know?
Yeah.
And don't tell me you have feelings for this person and you want to go off and marry him and not be, because it screws everything up. And that's why if it almost is more it's almost healthier for a spouse to say, you know, you're not, I don't feel fulfilled sexually.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
I do love you.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about me going outside of our dynamic to
Mm-hmm.
feel completely fulfilled? Now, some people might say that's incredibly selfish and that person should just forget about what it is that would fulfill them and just stay where you are and don't do that. But see, then you're telling someone to deny part of themselves.
Yeah, it's and I've run into this too, especially with you know, heterosexual couples that have been married for a long time, and all of a sudden one of the partners wants to engage in a same-sex relationship physically.
Okay.
And that's something they want to explore. And it's interesting because I can't believe we're running out of time. We'll have to
Yeah, we
do
are.
another taboo one. Um, there's still in our culture, the husbands are like, yeah, go ahead, bring another woman into the room, but the
Yeah, they
minute,
seem to be more flexible about it
yeah, and it's still perceived as something
as a
that's
man.
erotic. But the minute that the man says, I might want to engage with another man, there's still so much stigma, even with the
Stigma.
wives. The wives are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But there are plenty of women like that's hot, sure, but there's still so much stigma around, especially in the environment I work in. But again, they say sexuality is a spectrum.
It
And I
is.
think that there's more that people are embracing. And I am happy to see that there's more conversation in monogamous heterosexual relationships about that, and vice versa, in homosexual relationships where, so one of the partners say, I kind of want to try this. And so it's very, it's opening up, but it's interesting where the threat lives. The threat lives more when a man wants to engage with a man. In a women relationship, when the woman wants to engage with a man, there's a lot of threat there. I have to navigate a lot of that. But it's, again, how do you meet those needs if your partner is not open to opening the relationship? And there are ways. But yeah, man, you start squashing those feelings,
And
and you
that
don't.
is what, I mean, because yeah, that's such a topic because like yeah, it is. It's just because you know what it is? It's all part of being human.
It is.
If you're
Yeah.
going to deny part of your humanness, if you're going to
Especially
look,
when you're with somebody like you were with your ex for, oh my God, you were a baby when you got married,
Mhm,
and so
married
sexuality,
way
boy,
too
that
young.
just grows and changes with every decade that you're in. And
Sure does.
so to think that you're just going to be kind of in this one road, and that concept is still pretty nailed into our idea of what relationships are. Like we talk about, oh, if your partner doesn't grow with you intellectually or emotionally or something, you're going to hit a crossroads and stuff. But sexuality is the same thing.
Sexuality is the same thing, and there's this thing, between, well, I'm just going to say husband and wives, don't want to ask, I don't want to tell my wife that I like this because it kind of, she'd feel objectified. So I'm going to have to go find some, I'm your wife and I love you and you love me. Dude, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of fun
Yeah.
objectification,
Yeah.
like, I mean, change it up, do something different. Like, but,
Yeah.
obviously address it first, but like, there shouldn't be this assumption, well, she's my wife. I need to respect her. I can't ask to do
I
that. So I have to
can't
go somewhere
emphasize,
else.
yeah, and I can't emphasize communication enough.
Yeah.
Because it is such a vulnerable place. I've seen couples where if one of the partners spontaneously tries something new, if they're already, in while they're engaged but haven't talked about it ahead of time, then there's all this insecurity that where'd you learn that? Why are you doing that? And
Where'd you pick that up?
where'd you pick that up? And then
Where'd
instead of it being something fun and new, Now you're like, haha, that was great. And you're pretty sure they're cheating on you. And it's just like, no, I read this book and but there was no conversation. So
Yeah, like there's got, I mean, yeah, like you can't just spring something on someone, like you can't just be like, did you ever hear of this?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
When you're in the middle of, when you're already engaged, you can't
Yeah.
just be like,
And
I don't
I
want to
get
get
it.
too
There's been times where
graphic,
like,
but
well, I thought she'd really like it. I thought it would be like this.
no, you
Talking might be good.
can't just surprise somebody with that. Yeah, so that's important. So anyway, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
there's so many. Yeah, and I'm sure we only just touched on the taboo, but I think this is good information. And I think, and I hope that we're normalizing some of these things. And I think to keep in mind, is this harmful? Is this
right.
harmful? Is it creating harm? And there is some natural things that happen that you don't even have to question that are harmful as a result of whatever that activity is.
Well, think about like the Wiccan philosophy, right? And it harm none, right?
Yep.
That is how you should live your life,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
If you think there's a possibility that it's going to harm someone, either physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever, then that is not what you need to think about.
Yep. And those are the things that, if anybody they talk about having regrets as they're getting older, it's usually those things. They caused harm unintentionally, they didn't ask, and sorry's not enough, whatever. So just don't do those things. Talk, 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 talk.
And that's how you
And
learn too, right? That's how you learn when if your actions have harmed someone
yeah.
directly or indirectly, the next time you're presented with that same situation, you're gonna pause.
And there's even other things that can, there's harm reduction, like, and I know that a lot of people have a lot of mixed feelings about this stuff, but so they have there are plenty of people in the world that are attracted to minors. They're called minor attracted people. And they don't act on it, but they're plagued with this.
Okay.
And they work through all these different ways to try to move through it so they don't engage. Remember,
Okay.
this is not your enemy. Just don't let it lead into something that becomes harmful or a crime. And there's all different ways to work through those things. And don't ever be afraid to ask for help, even if it's controversial help. If you are trying to prevent yourself from doing something harmful, sexually or non-sexually, get the help you need. Find some relief from that. It's out there, and thank God it is. It's no different than
Yeah.
remember, like with harm reduction drug use. It used to be abstinence completely, and now when they realize with the opioid, epidemic, they have to move into Suboxone. They have to do something to substitute because it just doesn't work. Well,
Doesn't work.
there's things out there for all kinds of addictions, just think before you act. Get the help you need. Because we do have sexual behaviors that are attached to abuse. So get the therapy that you need, get the help that you need. You don't have to live in that headspace.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Katie. That was a good conversation. And I think you're like ultra professional today because you're in your office.
Oh, and since am I in my office? Yeah.
You like the vibe is, on. Well, no, it always is, but like, it's like when you're in your professional space, you're like,
Well, plus it's 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm bright and fresh. Oh,
see,
shoot.
I'm a middle afternoon type of person. Like when you were like 9,
I
I was
used
like
to be until then,
9.
my son who didn't sleep through the night till he was 2, no joke,
God.
and he still gets up at 6 in the morning. So I'm like, I guess I don't have a choice.
You're
It's
like,
morning person.
hey,
Yeah.
awesome.
No, remember I'd play gigs till 5 in the morning and then sleep till 1 and then work nights, and not anymore.
Not
Wait, I have
anymore.
a client. I gotta go. Okay, so
Okay.
we have to do this one. I think we have to finish our list, right?
Okay. Yeah. And if there's any that you can think of that you've dealt with that
Yeah, I'm
are,
trying to think if there's one I haven't, and that's why I really want to normalize it, is because this stuff comes up all the time.
well, daily.
And everybody
Really,
feels like they're the only one, and I think it's really important people know that they're not.
they're not alone. Yeah, they're not alone.
And
All
sex is a
right.
playground. It's a good time.
It
You know,
should
find
be. It
somebody that you
should
love and
be.
trust, and it's like the best roller coaster ever.
It is. I mean, someone you love and trust, or just a casual thing, or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, it can be
yeah,
whatever. That's why there's so many facets to it. That's why it takes 3 episodes to talk about it
yeah. And that's why it's a huge part of our culture. Because
in our
it's,
lives. Yeah.
I mean, God made this body to not just make babies. You know?
Right.
So if you're
That's right.
struggling with religion concept, just think about your anatomy. That's not to
Yeah.
make babies. There's parts.
The whole religion thing is a whole other art.
Yeah. That's listener.
We missed that one.
We should.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Go to
Have a
work.
wonderful day. And then
You
we'll
too.
see you soon, and we'll do the second part of the list.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.